When Mr.T lost his brother and his territory, he had no choice but to retreat into the western sector. On July 2nd, the 5 males had been seen resting together, which had been initially taken as a good sign because the bond they once shared was still intact. What had been overlooked though was that Mr.T was a territorial male. No one could have anticipated how he would react to the offspring his brothers had sired with the Ximunghwe lionesses. To everyone's shock, just one day after the reunion, Mr.T came across the Ximunghwe pride and killed one of their 6-month-old cubs. What is deeply embedded in the DNA of a male lion had been called an act of brutality. To his excuse, he didn't know the cubs nor their mothers, and he did what male lions are supposed to do to pass their genes successfully down to the next generation. Be that as it may, for now Mr.T had more important things on his agenda. He wanted his territory back. He and his brothers went back to the east to get back what he's lost. On July the 5th, the 5 Mapogo were seen in Londolozi, where they hadn't been seen in 2 long years. What happened that night had been interpreted in different ways. One thing everyone agrees on is that both sides engaged in a roaring match after dark. What happened over the course of the night, though, no one had ever witnessed. By next morning, they were back in Singita and killed a buffalo. However, the next days are kinda blurry, which makes it hard to piece the following events together. The night of July 9, the dam cam on Elephant Plains recorded the noise of lions fighting together. This audio recording had been taken later as a plausible explanation for Rasta's disappearance shortly after. It had been assumed that Rasta and Pretty Boy went back to the east alone and were in the middle of this fight. However, even if they were there, it was not the event that killed Rasta. On July 11, 3 Mapogo were seen together on Leopard Hills deep in the west. The other 2 were also accounted for south of their position. What hadn't been reported that day were injuries on any of the males. Leopard Hills Ranger Dave Pusey stated that same evening that he saw all 5 Mapogo roaring together. Ryan Johnson, a ranger of Arathusa at the time, did an interview on the matter. He talked about how the circumstantial evidence had been pieced together to come up with an answer to explain Rasta's disappearance. He also mentioned that the skull of a male lion had been found. They concluded it must have been Rasta's. Unfortunately, the interviewer did not ask where and when this piece of evidence had been collected. EP rangers confirmed the whereabouts of the Majingilane on July 10 when they were seen on a buffalo kill. According to their report, they had injuries from fighting with other males, which of course had been concluded to be the Mapogo. It is believed that Rasta went missing between July 19 and 23. Maybe that was when they decided to go on a mission alone. On July 25, 4 Mapogo were seen with the Othawa pride on a buffalo kill. Rasta had not been accounted for. On July 27, Pretty Boy was seen again with a young Othawa lioness on another kill, with severe injuries to his back. Roger Lokwane, the ranger who posted that photo, assumed that these injuries came from the fight on Elephant Plains on July 9. Taking all pieces of evidence into account, we can assume that a fight took place on Elephant Plains the night of July 9, involving the Majingilane and possibly the Mapogo. On the other hand, on July 11, Rasta was still seen alive. To sum it up, no one can say for certain what happened to him. His disappearance remains a mystery. For the Mapogos, though, it was a hard pill to swallow to lose two brothers in their prime in just a matter of weeks. Meanwhile, Mr.T's mission to go after the Ximunghwe pride hadn't been completed yet. After the first cub had been killed, his brothers were warned and kept a close eye on him. Not that they were much of an obstacle, because by the end of July, only the three youngest Ximunghwe cubs were still alive. But sadly, they too got killed in the month of August. On a side note though, Mr.T did not touch the Othawa cubs who were born by the end of 2009. He knew their mother and acknowledged them as part of his bloodline. Even though infanticide is a common thing in lion society, by committing these acts he earned his nickname Satan. The oldest Ximunghwe lioness, though, was pregnant when Mr.T returned. She made a very smart move. She mated with him while pregnant and gave birth to her two male cubs by the end of August. These cubs were seen early November for the first time on a kudu kill, when they were just a little over 2 months old. To everyone's surprise, Mr.T accepted them, and they will later be called the Mini Pogs. The Tslalala pride, on the other hand, who had been left behind by Mr.T, was trying hard to keep the 6 subadults alive. The lionesses were under pressure and had already lost 2 of their young to the Majingilane. To protect the other 6, the 3 lionesses decided to follow Mr.T into the western sector. At the beginning of August, 2 lionesses were seen with some of the Mapogo on a giraffe carcass. However, they were not completely safe. After spending over 6 weeks in Othawa territory, they eventually decided to go back. It didn't take the Majingilane long to follow their trail, and so the lionesses did the best they could under the given circumstances. To draw the attention away from the youngsters, the Tslalala sisters started to mate with them. Bibi, the matriarch, had taken the 6 youngsters under her wing, but unfortunately 2 of them had lost contact to the group. The young male lived a half-nomadic life, way too young to fend for himself. In September he got attacked by the Majingilane and was eventually killed by them in the beginning of November. one of the 5 young lionesses had suffered a severe hyena attack and half of her tail had been bitten off. She was on her way to recovery when the Majingilane found her and killed her, only a week after the demise of her brother. This left the 4 young lionesses under the care of Bibi as the only survivors of Mr.T and Kinky Tail's bloodline. Who could have known that they would be the ones who passed the genes of their fathers down to the biggest lion pride living in Sabi Sand today? The Tslalala sisters though eventually accepted the Majingilane and gave birth to their first litter in December. There were still 3 other cubs Mr.T and Kinky Tail had sired, the 3 young males from the Sparta breakaway pride. They were just 6 weeks old when Kinky Tail had been killed. They were doomed to grow up without fathers, and their mothers tried their best to keep them safe. With Mr.T being absent, at least the bar to being reunited with the pride had been lowered substantially. The first attempt to introduce the cubs to the core pride and solo was made in August. Unfortunately, it didn't go as planned and the get-together just lasted one day. In October, there was another encounter on a buffalo kill, which had been initially mistaken to be the subadults from the Sparta pride. It was actually the Tsalala pride the 2 Sparta lionesses and their cubs shared a carcass with. On December 7, though, hopes were flying high when the entire pride came together on a buffalo carcass. Solo, who was trying hard to fill the big shoes of the roller coaster male, surprisingly accepted the 7-month-old male cubs. It was absolutely adorable how the 3 cubs approached Solo playfully and were trying to rub up to him. But sadly, this joyful moment wasn't meant to last. Only 10 days later, disaster struck once more, and the Rangers snapped back into reality. The Sparta pride had made another buffalo kill, and all the pride members were accounted for. During the night, they suffered an attack by the Majingilane, in which one of the mothers and 2 of the little cubs were killed, and the other mother got injured. She tried her best to keep the cub out of harm's way, but she sadly didn't succeed. The cub got killed 2 months later in a conflict with another pride. By the end of 2010, the Majingilane had 3 prides under their control, and the Sparta pride was about to become the 4th. While the Tslalala pride was hiding in the west, they followed the Styx lionesses. At the beginning of 2010, the Styx pride had 5 adult lionesses. The surviving offspring of the roller coaster male, consisting of 3 females and 1 male, was over 2 years old and on their way to independence. The pride was still split up. The cubs the 2 Mapogo had sired with the 2 Styx breakaway lionesses were long gone. Previous attempts to reunite failed by the urge to mate with Mr.T and Kinky Tail again. Shortly before he got killed, Kinky Tail was seen mating with one of these lionesses in Mala. His demise didn't make the life for the Styx pride easier. One of the 6-year-old breakaway lionesses got killed in a conflict with the Tslalala pride, and then came the Majingilane. They went on and decimated the pride further, by killing 2 subadults and the lead lioness of the core pride. By the end of July, the Styx pride had been reduced to 5 members, 3 adult lionesses, and out of 9 cubs with roller coaster, only a male and a female survived. The oldest lioness took the 2 youngsters under her wing, while the other 2 mated with the Majingilane. The first Majingilane cubs, though, were born into a pride unknown to Swaziland. It was a small pride from Kruger who crossed over to Mala Mala. The 2 lionesses had already given birth to their cubs in August and September. Back to the west, everything had calmed down. Aside from a very unfortunate incident that happened in the Othawa pride, things seemed to go back to normal. The Othawa pride hadn't been affected by the return of Mr.T. The 5 subadults were strong and healthy, and the 2 young cubs had nothing to fear. The pride went on a buffalo hunt in September, when one of the old lionesses unfortunately made the wrong move. She suffered a fatal puncture wound and died within the hour. Fortunately for the pride, the 2 young males were big enough to assist the one remaining adult in hunting big prey. The downside was the pride was on its own. With no lionesses to mate with, the Mapogo lost interest and abandoned the pride. They rather spent their time and energy to get the other 4 Ximunghwe lionesses pregnant. All in all, everything went well in the western sector. The Mapogo had their territory under control, and the 2 rival coalitions had settled into their respective territories. Although Makulu was already past his prime, it looked like as if the 5th year of dominance of the Mapogo in the western sector would end with lots of happenings to look forward to. By the end of November, things changed, and the Mapogo suffered the loss of yet another member. On November 26, Makulu, Pretty Boy, and Dreadlocks were found on a young hippo kill. No one could have known that this would be the last footage of Dreadlocks. After they had finished, he would leave to go on patrol, never to return again. 2010 would end on a bitter note. The most powerful coalition in Swaziland had lost 3 of their members in less than 6 months. What happened to him is as mysterious as the disappearance of Rasta. Rumors had manifested into some kind of logical explanation: poaching.